Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a video review for this week. And for this one, I'm going to be taking a look at Cyberpunk 2077 on the Xbox Series X and S, being played on the Series S. Though this one took me a little bit longer to try to do a review than I originally had thought, mostly because a lot of things were happening at this time. Though it's also worth pointing out that the game's also available on Xbox One, PS4, PS5, PC via Steam, and then at one point it was also on Google Stadia before, Google shut down Stadia and all. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link down in the description down below, or you click on the card that will appear up on this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And for parents out there, it's worth pointing out that Cyberpunk 2077 is rated M for mature audiences only, ages 17 and up by the ESRB rating system though. When Cyberpunk 2077 was announced several years ago, there was certainly a lot of excitement for it because this was the next big game from CD Projekt Red following the success of Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and the positive response that game has gotten, including sort of setting an example of how DLCs can be handled, which again, when done right, DLCs can be a good thing and all that stuff. But when the game finally came out in 2020, all that goodwill that CD Projekt Red kind of built for that kind of went out the window. The game was launched in a very pitiful state, especially on the PS4 and the PS5. This was PS4 and the Xbox One. This was around the time the PS5, Xbox Series X and S came out. And even the PC version had some issues and everything like that. On top of that, we've learned stories about how crunch time and some situations with how the game was developed and everything like that. It really damaged CD Projekt Red's reputation. It was so bad that the game was pulled from the PlayStation Store to the point that CD Projekt Red had to give refunds for those who purchased the game. Something that was very rare, that you don't often see a lot in the gaming world and all. In fact, the only two versions that kind of were more acceptable than what the PS4 and PS4 and Xbox One version was the version playing on Xbox Series S, which basically only had it at 30 frames per second, but video showed that it was a stable, steady 30 frames per second, and even the Google Stadia version looked better than, say, the other versions did, which was pretty something at the time where Stadia was not in the best positions before we know what exactly its faith and everything like that. This would lead to the developers ultimately apologizing to how this game came out and will start working to earn people's trust again, and certainly put in a lot of hot fixes and all, and even certain patches and that. And many people thought this game was pretty much written off, that there was no way this game could recover. Then in sometime in 2022, patch 1.6 came out, which was sort of a follow-up to the other patches for the PS5 and the Xbox Series S. This one brought it to the Xbox Series S, and on top of that, we also had a preview of, at the time, Cyberpunk Edge Runner, an anime series or anime mini limited series being shown on Netflix. The success of that would really give Cyberpunk 2077 a second chance and all, and put the game now in a much more better state and more beloved by a lot of folks than when it was when the game originally came out. Now, I've been playing the game whenever I get a chance to turn on my Xbox Series S, and I will say, after all these years, and it was certainly a long time coming, the game is definitely way more enjoyable than it was when it originally launched though. That doesn't mean that the criticism towards CD Projekt Red is going away or anything like that, and they absolutely deserve the backlash and criticism, don't get me wrong. But I will say Cyberpunk 2077 is definitely a better game now than when it was when it originally launched and all. Excuse me. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. And that is basically, the first one has to do with the improvements, and there is a lot of improvements in this game from the 2020 launch though. It does feel a bit better. It certainly is a bit more stable, and visually it definitely looks like an improvement from where it was in 2020. One of the big improvements with 1.6 that they added, at least for the Xbox Series S, is finally an option to use a quality or performance mode. I've been playing this game in performance mode though. I tend to be more of a gameplay over graphics type of a person, and honestly it runs pretty well at 60 frames per second though. Obviously, there is some drop in the quality of the visuals, though, that is kind of expected, especially when you offer a graphical option, so that isn't really that shocking, though. But like I said, I'm more of a gameplay over graphics type of person, so hats off for them for making some improvements. Hats off for finally adding the option for a quality or performance mode for Xbox Series S owners like me and also, yeah, definitely this game does have some improvements over the 2020 launch. The next thing I do want to talk about is the gameplay. And the gameplay is done pretty well in this game, though. Obviously, the game is sort of more of a action RPG to a certain degree, much like how, in a way, Witcher is, or even some of like Bethesda's games like Fallout or the upcoming Starfield and everything like that, though. It's basically a first-person shooter with RPG elements into it, though. You do have different varieties of weapons, ranging from different guns to even several melee weapons. I'm using a katana sword and everything like that. And the game does depending on what kind of situation you're in, does give you the choice of how you want to approach the situation. Do you want to handle it going gun blazing, or do you want to try to take a stealthy approach? And depending on what kind of enhancements you put on your character's V, which you can play as a male or female, some of them could be able to hack other enemies or shut down cameras or so forth. So the game definitely gives you a little bit of freedom to figure out how you want to best approach the situation, though. And every time you complete a mission, you'll basically level up, though, and you can use that to maybe increase, the time you have to wait to get a RAM to hack something, to increase, better use of if you're using a certain type of weapon or anything like that. So there are different ways to when you level up and everything like that. But in terms of the gameplay, though, I will say it's good. The gunplay is also good as well, and I definitely like it. Gives you somewhat more of a freedom to figure out how you want to best approach the situation depending on what is being handed to you, and of course maybe what difficulty you're playing the game on, though. And last but not least is the story and the lore. And I have to say, I definitely appreciate the story and lore a bit more than I did in the past. Some of that has to do with after watching Cyberpunk Edge Runner on Netflix, but I definitely enjoy this dystopia future that Night City is, though. And I definitely liked Keanu Reeves, who plays Johnny Silverhand, if I'm saying the name correctly, though. I definitely think his character and his voice definitely fits the mood for Night City and everything like that. It's just the world of Night City and the world just looks very interesting and everything like that. And I am definitely open to the idea of exploring more of Night City, whether it's this upcoming Phantom Liberty DLC to a Cyberpunk 2077 2 or sequel to it, to be exact. But I definitely like the world of Night City and the lore and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, which is the con. So we'll take a little break and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my video review of Cyberpunk 2077 on the Xbox Series X and S. As I mentioned, I've been playing this on the Series S. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we start off with the cons, though? And there's really only 2 cons that I do want to point out in terms of my time with Cyberpunk 2077. Now, as I mentioned before, I talked about how the game is definitely an improvement from the 2020 launch, and I still stand behind that, though. This game is definitely way better than where we were back in 2020 and all. That said, though, that's not to say that there aren't some issues now and then. And while the game definitely plays well, though, there are some situations where I did find some bugs here and there. In some cases, I found basically a weapon floating in midair, to certain situations where AI is somewhat questionable sometimes, particularly when it comes to driving a vehicle and all, to sometimes a body stuck within a wall or anything like that. So there are some bugs here and there. Having said that, though, based on my time with the game so far, I haven't ran into anything that led to the game breaking or crashing, at least based on my time with it. So Yeah, there are a little bit of bugs, maybe some glitches here and there, but nothing that broke the game or ruined the experience, at least based on my time with it though. And last but not least, I do want to talk about is the visuals. And I will say the visuals are kind of a mixed bag, at least from my view though. I don't think they're necessarily terrible or anything like that, and there are certainly some of the art style that you see in the game look really neat and everything like that. And so the game still looks good to a certain degree though, but I will say it isn't exactly the prettiest game out there, to be exact though. I mean, obviously I'm playing it on the Series S compared to where it is on the PS5 or the Xbox Series X, or even PC for that matter, depending on your type of rig and everything like that though. But even so though, it still isn't exactly the most best looking game out there. It's not bad, it just doesn't really impress me in any way though. Some of the world just looks okay though, but still there are some neat art designs and there are certain neat character designs in the game, and that certainly isn't by any means a bad thing. So for me, the visuals are kind of a mixed bag, at least from my perspective. Overall, Cyberpunk 2077 is a fun game to play, and it's definitely in a better state than when it was when it released back in 2020 though. At its best though, the game has improved from where the disastrous 2020 launch was. The gameplay is enjoyable and fun, and I'm certainly enjoying the game to be exact though. And the story and the lore and the world of Night City is very interesting, and I'm open to seeing more of the world of Night City and all. At its worst though, there are some bugs here and there, as I mentioned, but like I said, I didn't find anything that broke the game in any shape, in any form, and the visuals are still somewhat of a mixed bag, to be exact. They're not terrible, but nothing really to write home about, but that still hasn't stopped me from enjoying this game and all. And I will say, compared to where we were like 3 years ago, Cyberpunk 2077 is still a fun game. It's just a shame that it took them, CD Projekt Red, this long to really put the game in a state that people can actually enjoy. And they got really lucky with the success of Edge Runner and some of the updates to really put Cyberpunk 2077 in a perfect state. I am hoping that CD Projekt Red learned their lesson from what happened with the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. And if a sequel were to happen, and it sounds like we could get a sequel and all, I would definitely be open to exploring more of like Night City or more of the world of Cyberpunk 2077, just like I'm still open to the idea of exploring more of The Witcher and everything like that. I just hope they learn their lesson from this, though. I really, really do, though, in terms of what their next game may be. But in either case, those who've been holding off on Cyberpunk 2077, it is worth trying out now, though. It is definitely a better game, as I said before, than it was when it originally launched back in 2020, though. Okay, this concludes my video review of Cyberpunk 2077 on the Xbox Series X and S. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Cyberpunk 2077? Do you think it is a better game now than when it originally launched back in 2020? Do you think they made some improvements to make the game better? Are there some areas you think they need to do a better job with in terms of making the game better than where it was before? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comments section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you'd like. You can do it through PayPal Me, Patreon, or Streamlabs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!